So thanks everybody for making the meeting tonight. We were off in August, so we're back from our July meeting. Hope everybody had a nice summer. Everybody's back, ready to go to work again. Tonight's agenda will include some administrative items, the update on the Mark Station garage, the project priority list, which will be important for us to spend some time on this evening. Update on the project status, advocacy, new business, and then general comment from the public. So I just want to start out with confirming the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda tonight?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Thanks,
Second.
Colette. Second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Sandra. All in favor? Sounds like we're good. Great. Also, the meeting minutes were published or sent out or posted for July. We'll need to approve those as well. So I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July.
Motion to approve the minutes from July.
Thanks, Colette. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll adopt the meeting minutes. We'll move on to the parking garage update. And John, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Janakos.
Janakos. Okay, that's what I thought. And you give us an update on the garage, and it's just for information only for the committee. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, OTC members. I'm happy to be back in front of you and give you a brief update on where we are with progress for the Odenton Mark train station structured parking garage project. We have submitted our first modification request to the county to basically go around the preliminary plan process, and that was approved. So we're very pleased that that first modification was accepted and approved. We are working on coordinating efforts with BG&E related to the project itself. So those conversations are ongoing. We're going to use the feedback from that discussion to kind of inform our final site plans and designs. We actually have a crew that's been working out at the site over the last few weeks, performing some test pitting and some other utility location efforts. These are help, again, to inform our final plan and design and approach, specifically as it relates to our utility connections for sanitary and water from the project site to the end of Odenton Road. So we're almost done wrapping that up. Once that's done, we'll feed that information to our civil team. They'll be able to wrap that into their final plan approach. Our other modifications will follow once we have a final plan update in hand. So that'll come in all due course in time at this point in time. I guess on one other point, we are still in discussions with DNR on our forest conservation approach. Our preferred request to them is the fee in lieu. So I'll let you know how those conversations go with that discussion there. The other discussion at hand and the preliminary or primary purpose of me asking to present today is we did receive some feedback from the county's fire marshal related to the design of the project. And fire marshal did make some comments related to the design of the project that required us to make some changes. And I think more so in the spirit of being completely transparent with the working group here, I wanted to make sure to share those with you and explain and walk you through the rationale. And then there is one aesthetic tweak to the southeast corner of the building that I wanted to walk you through as well, and walk you through a couple of the options that we are entertaining and the rationale behind it. So I'll try to be as quick as I can related to those. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully this works. So hopefully everyone is seeing a plan drawing right now. And hopefully everyone can see my cursor as well.
Right.
Very good. So the comments we received back from the fire marshal, there were, I'll categorize them as four major ones related primarily to fire engine accessibility and hose length, hose drag lengths. So one of the first requests, well, I would say not necessarily requests, one of the first things we're asked to add to the design is a fire hydrant. It's difficult to see in here, but out to this corner, we've been asked to add a fire hydrant. So we're going to work with the civil team and making sure in our design team to get a water line through the garage and out to that fire hydrant. So there's accessibility there. Not a big deal, not a big challenge from that perspective. We are choosing to go through the garage for that because it is this straightest line of connection and won't require having to go out into the right of way or jog around the building. So from price point and direct line of sight, that makes the most sense. You'll notice in green, these are kind of driving pathways for fire engines and accessibility. So one of the items that I'll note here is there's a stairwell down here in this space. So it's difficult to see, just basically a very small stairwell. There is a topographical change here down to the wetland area. The topo lines are kind of hidden behind the garage outline here, but there is a bit of a steep decline down there. The fire marshal asked that we add a stairwell here in the case that if someone were in the garage and fell or jumped into the stormwater area, that the fire department would have a means in which to go down to that space and rescue that person. And so working with them, we kind of identified this location as the best spot for that. The lines, these kind of purple lines you see are the hose lines, hose length lines here. So we're just trying to make sure that we have full and complete coverage all the way around the building. So we added a stairwell, and then we extended this drive area here to allow for a fire truck to turn into the project site, go all the way down here and pull a hose to this very point. So there isn't any gaps in hose coverage for the project. I will focus in here because I want to make sure it's very clear. You can see that we have our WB signs here. Hopefully everyone can see this dash line that says WB is the wetland buffer. So you can see that we are not, with this change, getting anywhere further into the wetland buffer than we previously discussed, which is this area over here. We discussed that previously under another public meeting and received, I think, thumbs up that was acceptable from that perspective from a modification approach. So by and large, we are talking about extending this area here out. We contemplate having to do maybe a small retaining wall with concrete to allow for a fire engine to park in that spot there. So those are two of the changes that we needed to make related to that. If there aren't any questions, I'll cycle down to Plan South and Southeast. Okay.
Yeah, that looks okay. Thanks, John.
Not a problem. One of the other items noted in the driving approach through the kiss and ride area here, kiss and ride driveway. This area here, it's not marked on this plan yet, but we will be widening a portion of this space here to allow for it to be over 15 feet wide. It's just slightly under 15 feet right now. I think it's like 14 feet 10 inches. So we were requested to make sure that this drive lane was widened just ever so slightly. So I think we're going to work with the design team and the civil team, just either, I believe the intent's going to be to carve into this to the extent we're able to, the island, and or shave a little bit off the curb. Whatever we disturb, obviously we will put back in better shape than we found it, just to create a wider drive path in just this pinch point area here for the fire engines. Again, I don't see that being a major impact to our site approach or landscaping approach. But again, just in the spirit of full transparency, that was what was requested. We were fortunate enough that this little outcropping of land actually just not too long ago was quit claim deeded to the state. So now they do control this, and we're free to be able to use this land as we please as well. So initially, this was a limiting factor in our capacity to widen that drive path. But now that the quitclaim deed has gone through, we have the ability to now use this as part of our approach to mitigating this concern. I guess in the spirit of keeping the best for last, the other request from the fire marshals that we enable a fire truck or fire engine to pull past in between the garage and the platform to position itself in this this position here close to where the bike and pedestrian pathway will go. The point of bringing the fire engine in here is, again, you can see this kind of magenta, and I'm terrible with color, so it looks magenta to me. If it's a different color, I apologize. The hose length here from that parked fire engine across, so that, again, we're not getting into any gap scenario with our hose there. So now the most important part and the biggest, I would consider the biggest change here, and apologies for all the drawing updates. You'll notice in this corner, the column lines, these dark dots, these thick dark dots. And I'm going to focus in a little bit more to make it a little bit clearer.
Those the columns area? Columns?
Yes, Martin.
Yeah.
Those are the columns for that entranceway in the
Right.
corner here. And obviously you can see the the turning lane interrupts two of the columns, really three of them, in the current alignment of that southeast corner of the garage. And so noticing that would create an issue in complying with the requirements of the fire marshal, I requested that the design team entertain some alternative approaches that still capture the spirit of that corner while also eliminating the conflict with the column lines from there. So I'm going to back out here for a second.
So 20 feet, John, is what the minimum requirement is there that the fire marshal needs for the fire trucks
Yes.
and so on?
Yes, I would note that the fire marshal was judicious enough not to require a full turnaround spot. He said that in the case that a fire truck does need to come in this space, they would back out here, but typically their preference is to do a turnaround. So there was some levity granted to the project from that perspective. And 20 feet is the minimum turn radius there. What I'm going to show you is the original approach to that southeast corner, and then two alternatives. So this is the approach that was presented previously. I believe was supported not only on the county and state side, but I believe I presented this to the group here and did not receive any major comments from that perspective. So this is as designed. The columns in question that conflict are this column, and a portion of this column here. On this drawing, it would be this column, and a portion of this column here. The design team came up with two alternatives. You can see the new alternatives are kind of grayed in here. You can see a darker gray shadow in the background. That is the footprint of the previously approved approach to the corner. And this is one of the options here. Again, you can see that the column used to come out to about here. We've tucked it in adjacent to the other column line, and as well as pinched the other column in further, as well as the one in the back here slightly. We still have open access from the platform into and through the garage and into the stairwell and elevator towers here. We are eliminating some of the glazing on top in lieu of just this concrete appearance. I mean, we can discuss different ways of approaching that. This is one option, and I will flip to one more page so you can see the other option. So I'll back out again so you can kind of see the footprint of the old darker gray previous footprint here, and then this kind of snugger version of this. And again, you can see it here. So we're eliminating much of the glazing and this vertical element that was in place. In discussions with the state and county, we'll call it leadership group that I'd meet with regularly, this was their preferred approach. They prefer this because if we were going to be eliminating that vertical essence, why not take all of it out? It does open up a space to allow us to do some either additional signage or public art or something to announce the station even further here. Still maintains that openness of the underground of the garage, as well as accessibility into the elevator circulation and stair circulation from there.
Yeah, with regard to that surface there has been a comment from our team about a member of our team that would be a good place for art. And I agree, that would be really nice. You'd see that from the trains that came into the station. So
Yep.
that might be a real nice place. Yeah.
So, this is the last of the fire marshal reaction changes that we have here. And again, in the spirit of being entirely transparent with this group, I wanted to bring it to your attention, highlight and walk through it, and to garner any responses from your perspective. As I noted, this option 2, is the one that state and county feel would be the best of the, we'll call it, lateral moves here.
So John, there's no change to the functionality of that space, is there? There's just less of it.
Yes.
But there really isn't a problem, is there?
No, not that I see. In fact, it may save a little bit of money for the project from that perspective, make it a little bit less expensive. And it does open up, initially when this element extended across, we talked about having murals inside of the building so that while folks were walking up the stair tower, they could see something interior. By pulling this back further, now open this up to the outside. And to your point, Martin, to those that are riding the train.
Yeah.
Or exiting and getting off the train from there.
Yeah. Hey, John, since you're going to be saving store title here, so since you're going to be saving a few dollars, the community's been trying to save a piece of artwork from the old factory. Be great if we could get a commitment to throw some dollars at making that happen at that space.
How big is that, Stuart?
Pardon?
How big is that art piece?
It's pretty big.
Okay.
It would honestly, it would probably have to be put up it was in the round when it was originally done, and it'll have to be put up in sections when it's laid out. It's just too long for it to do. But John, you and I could talk offline on that. I love that opportunity and hook the right people up to see if we can make that happen for the community.
Yeah, no, that would be great, Stuart. I know you mentioned that in our previous conversations, and it's been in the back of my mind too, as the topic of public art and art opportunities arise for the project, to make sure that it's something that doesn't get lost.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Colette?
I'm just wondering, how does this impact the retail space at all? I can't remember exactly where it was on the plans where it was supposed to be.
The retail space, it should not impact the retail space. The retail space resides in this area. It's kind of floating in the ether, but it's in this space back here.
So it doesn't help it necessarily either with this.
It doesn't,
in terms of visibility. That was the only thing I was thinking, maybe.
It doesn't. You see that the back end of by and large, we didn't change we'll call it the elevator stack at all. So because that's not moving any further planned north, it wouldn't be interfering with the retail space located in that space above at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't think that revision to design, John, affects the visibility of that retail space, though. I think what Colette was asking too. I don't think it does, right?
No, I don't believe it does at all. If anything, because we were reducing this space, you could potentially have directional signage that's a little bit easier to see for a cafe or something to that effect in this open space from a view shed perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Well, like I mentioned, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we were still progressing the project forward and to present those very slight changes. Again, I'm not requesting any modifications or anything like that. Just fulfilling my promise to you that if things do change, I'm going to do my best to inform you as soon as I have the opportunity to do so.
John, can you update us on the current timeline, please?
Yeah, we're working on updating the schedule right now. Obviously, some of the additional field work we're doing to inform our final plan and submission is one of the main drivers right now. So I'm still working with the team on my end to do a more thorough update of the schedule from that perspective. So I would beg that you let me come back at a later time and provide you with a more thorough update related to that once I have better information.
That's fine. Either way, or just send to Mark and he'll distribute it to us, but appreciate that when it happens. Thanks.
Yeah, not a problem. Happy to share with Mark as well.
Well, John, thanks for that presentation and the updated information. Looks pretty good to me, and we have some comments from the group to come back. So, but that's good.
Fantastic.
Anything else that the team have? More comments about that? Thanks again, John. Good seeing you again.
Pleasure. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we are moving into the project priority list, and hopefully you've had a chance to peruse that a bit. We need to submit that this month due to vagaries of the planning, I guess, Mark, as to why we have to do it right now. If you want to say anything about that, the timing.
Yeah, so again, if you do remember, this was typically the time of year that we would review an annual report that went over various statistics, say building permits, any new planning initiatives, population projections, things like that. With the now updated master plan, the annual report will take on a different shape, that being more of an evaluation of the strategies that were adopted in the master plan. And since that master plan was adopted in March of this past year, we don't plan on doing an annual report or status update of those strategies until spring of 2025, roughly. So like I said, is because this priority project list was part of that annual report, which isn't being done now until the spring, the priority project list is intended to help inform the budget process, which starts for the county. The capital improvement project budget starts at this time, even though it doesn't get approved by the county council until June of next year. So that is why we need the Office Planning and Zoning needs the advisory committee's recommendations for what you all feel are priority capital projects now, so that this can then go into consideration by other departments, and hopefully find themselves as part of the capital budget this time in the springtime and June for adoption.
Yeah.
So so right, like Martin had said, is hopefully you all have had a chance to review this. I don't think that there's anything, well, I should say it's the same list from last year from the annual report. It's just that the status have been updated for 2024. So
Yeah.
I know then in a couple of emails I had sent that I'm just trying to get you all started here with some discussion here is we had talked about the bus stops being a project that may have funding readily available. Colette had reached out to ask if there were any bus stops that are currently improved so that you all can sort of either pass over those or re-examine those to see if they need to be improved any further. From my look, it does not look like any of the bus stops have any type of improvement, whether it's a concrete pad or a bus shelter. They do appear to just be signs in the ground, mostly next to a sidewalk, sometimes not even next to a sidewalk. And I think Jason had asked for ridership for these areas, and that's not something that the county necessarily tracks, I guess, to 100% accuracy. So if you can imagine that some of the popular bus stops would be then around the train station. So there are two bus stops there, one on the east lot, one on the west lot. And since we know that the west lot is going to be improved with this parking garage, I don't know if you necessarily want to make a recommendation for that to be improved at this time, knowing it's just going to be torn down and rebuilt in the next few years. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
agree with that, Mark. And I think the east lot, there's only a sign on a telephone pole there, as
Yeah.
I remember.
yep,
So there really is no place to stand. There's no real shelter there at all. So
that's
that
right.
would be an ideal candidate for one of those stop improvements.
Yeah. The other item I may just kind of mention here briefly is Odenton Avenue. You may hear next month when the developer of Seven Oaks at OTC or OTC at Seven Oaks come back in to represent their project. That part of that right of way that currently parallels Route 32. This is north of 175, south of 32. It's currently a big wooded lot there along Town Center Boulevard. But if you were to go west to 32, within the woods there, they have lost part of that right of way because State Highway Administration recently used some of that land to build a stormwater management pond. So, so there may be growing constraints to build Odenton Avenue, given some loss of right of way, wetlands. There are some wetlands within that area again. And there is another section that was actually never secured during this process.
So Mark,
That's
that was pretty far down on the list if I'm looking at this. Are you suggesting with this new information that it changed its relative importance, or what do you think?
It's just something for you all to consider. You may say, Mark, we get it, is there, we may be losing traction on Odenton Avenue, but you may say, make every effort to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because it would help alleviate traffic on Town Center Boulevard, create another section of a gridded street there on the west side of that area, of the core area. So,
Okay, so what you're saying is because of what's been happening with that area, we're losing the leverage and the possibility of making the kind of improvements we expected there. So
Right.
that may elevate this to a higher priority,
Yep.
possibly. Okay.
Or you may just want to leave it, right? Well, it is not currently funded.
Mhm.
So, it would be a matter of in your letter ultimately that you would then want to vote on here at the end of your discussion
Mhm.
to suggest that this project is one of your higher priorities that is not currently funded. So, so I think that's the primer I sort of wanted to give you all to get you going. Again, happy to answer any questions, but really, however you all want to start discussing whether you want to change the priorities or add or subtract.
From my standpoint, looking at this, I think we need to revise some of the priorities and probably add clarification on one of them. But
Okay.
before I get into that, maybe just ask the rest of the group if they've had a chance to look at this and some thoughts come to mind. Anybody want to offer some ideas on this list?
I do, Martin Stewart
Okay,
here.
Stuart.
So I think we need to know first where our top priority projects are as far as funding and moving forward. And then if we reduce their priority, does that reduce the position that they're in now? So, Odenton Community Park, we've heard nothing about. I don't know what's going on there. Haven't had any meetings, don't know whether it's still being built in phases, don't know what kind of, I don't know anything, haven't heard much about it, don't know where that is. The parking garage and transit oriented development, we heard where that is. My apologies for not asking John when he was on. But I do have some concern that it could become a cut with the budget cuts. Now, with that said, I have read the entire 584 pages of the Consolidated Transportation Plan. And fortunately, that Mark Garage is the #1 project in the state. The top 4 projects are in Anne Arundel County. So we're fortunate for that. Actually, that's not true. The garage is number 4. And my concern is that the top project is Route 3. And out of a 2,000 rating, it got 1,200 and some. And when you drop down to the Mark train station garage, it's ranked in the like 200s out of 2,000, but so is everything else below that. So number 1 to number 4 drops tremendously. I think I sent Mark an email about that. So
Stuart, just to clarify, are you saying that there's a possibility that even though all this planning has occurred and funding been identified, that this project could still fall through or be majorly delayed?
I am not claiming that. I am just saying there's $1.5 billion that have not been decided how it's going to be cut out of the transportation budget.
Yeah.
Okay. And this garage, the county's got funds, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, committed to it. I don't know how the state funds are committed, and they could always be pooled, and they could be pooling the funds that they need to design it and put it back in later on, so that pushes it back. So I just don't know that, but you know, you have experience in transportation, so do I, so that can happen.
Yeah.
The Grid Street project, we had Malcolm come from the state, was it Malcolm? And tell us the situation there, which has not changed, that there is likely to be a delay if it all happens because of concerns on being able to acquire enough right-of-ways in order to do the Grid Street project. So those have been, for the right reasons, our top 3 projects. So by do we want to move more into the top 3 and make it 4 or 5? Do we want to move them out? And if we do move them out, then how is that looked at if anybody pays attention to what we say at all, which I doubt, to be honest with you. And I can back that up, but I won't. So you know, the question is whether they're going to pay attention. The bus stop improvements we've talked about, there's so much more into that. And frankly, most of them that we need in the area are probably along 175, which is a state right away. And I'm not sure this has anything to do with that.
Well, even along Piney Orchard Parkway.
Well, you know, look, there are, and you run into the same problem where they are. It's not just putting up a covered bus stop.
Yeah.
It's getting the permits, it's getting the design, it's putting in a large enough pad. It's about 20, well, it was quite some time ago. I bet you it's more now. It's probably $20,000 to $30,000 just to put in a bus stop.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, by the time you do all that, do the pad and the structure and, you know, the enclosures, then you're going to have to worry about, once you put them in, they have to be maintained. What happens if somebody puts graffiti on it?
Yeah.
And then how is all that? So there's just a lot more, and it really needs a consolidated plan. And it's something that should be included in the sidewalk project, which is what I've been working on with the state.
I would agree the sidewalk program is important. Something else about the bus stops themselves. They are part of a larger, I'll call it, local transportation plan. And I've been harping for a long time about the first and last mile issue. Just go back in time very quickly. You may remember that when the bus service started, it came down Watt Chapel and picked up people who were going to the Mark station. And the bus was timed to the schedule of the Mark train. Right now, it doesn't seem to do that, nor does it seem to have a reliable service still in areas where it needs to be. So I've always advocated that we really need to have a better plan to deal with the first and last mile. The problem is that as we get more people using the station, moving in here, there's going to be more cars going to the station. Hey, lots of parking. Have you seen the 175 or 170 at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? It's pretty jammed up. So I think that's only going to get worse. We got to get people out of their cars when they go to the train station. So I would be an advocate for adding something to call attention to the first and last mile. And whether that's a bus service, whether it's expansion of bike routes, that's not going to grab a whole lot of people, by the way, but you want to get more people. So the bus probably is your predominant way of getting people home and to the train station. So I don't know. That's
Martin, I spent a long time preaching this and trying to see what you can do about it. First of all, you can't make people get out of their cars, number one. The ridership along Piney Orchard Parkway, I was involved with the bus system when we started routes, and we had 8 people. It was costing $80 a trip. It was cheaper to put them into an Uber and send them home from the train station than was to run the bus service.
well, the only
I
problem I
tried to-
think with that, interrupt us, so just
Yeah,
real
go ahead.
is that, you know, if you went to the Mark train station, there was very little information about that service, even a published schedule and where to get it, and it was unreliable. I have witnessed people throwing fits because they canceled the bus. The guy's at the station, he can't get home. So I think a lot of those reliability problems plagued the service, and nobody wanted to ride it because they couldn't depend on it. If there were greater focus, a nicer bus, whatever, it may attract more riders to the station. So I
There's
don't know if we
no,
want to give up for sure,
Martin, there's no money for it. The MTA has no interest. Look at the Consolidated Transportation Plan, no interest of funding transit. That's going to be the first thing that's hit with these budget cuts. And we can't, you need to either, and the thing we're doing now is, which is the right thing, is providing more residential near the train stations and the MARC stations so people can walk to work.
Mhm.
You can't provide the last mile for everybody. You can't. And what I tried to do is I tried to get all the apartment complex managers to get together and to get a shuttle bus, and in the morning and in the evening do a bus transportation between all their complexes, and couldn't get anybody to agree on that. I mean, the effort's been there. The state, when they don't have money, they just do studies and they study it to death, but there's no implementation of the results of the study. And I'm a frustrated not public servant, but I gave my time. I was at meetings with 40 people at a time, and they're all being paid to be there, and I'm not. And it's a
I hear you,
passion of
Stuart.
mine. And
I
then,
know when I was with APTA, the first and last mile was
yeah,
the biggest challenge for these TODs. And TOD is a great concept if you can build all the residences around the station, but it still leaves a lot of people coming into that station. So I think Colette's got her hand up.
yeah, let's shut up and let somebody else talk.
Thank you.
Colette, please.
I did want to say that just because I know that public transportation, especially with the bus, is challenging. We don't live in a culture that really has grown up using a public bus, but nevertheless, I don't think, especially if we're dealing with a TOD, that we should say, we're just not going to do it because people aren't used to it yet. And in terms of the bus stops, if there are $50,000 there for improvements, then we should find a way to spend it. Okay, like we shouldn't make sure that gets invested in Odenton in some way. And I mean, first and foremost, if we can't get sidewalks, then we should at least have a pad. If you have someone with a stroller, if you have someone with a walker, if you have someone who's in a wheelchair, it is irresponsible of the county, honestly, to let these folks out on a pad of grass. And I see that regularly, that people are just standing in the grass or they're off to the side or something. And so in terms of priorities, just get them a pad, get them a bench if we have extra money to spend, right? But just systematically start going through all of the bus stops in the area, and start adding those amenities, which honestly shouldn't be amenities. Those should be requirements for a bus.
I would agree that maybe if it were done better and, we gave it more time and actually invested the money, ridership might grow. But if I may go back just real quickly to Mark's comment about the east side of the MARC station there, that one seems to be a no-brainer. And the reason I think that would be important as a location is that people will see it. To get off the train, hey, there's a bus stop here. This looks pretty good. I'll check into it. Right now, just a sign and, you gotta stand out in the parking lot. So that may be one, I think, could we all agree on
I
maybe?
would agree there, Martin.
Yeah,
And Mark, and everybody, there's some things that are not up to this committee to do. Okay, let's go in a chamber and do it. But as far as deciding on what these improvements and having this discussion, which is worthy of this, but I continue, there is so much money in the TIF fund, and nobody will tell us how, or nobody will figure out how, or nobody will figure a way to use that money. Now, it was utilized for the parking garage, I will admit that. But there's some small things that can be taken care of, relatively small compared to a parking garage, that could be taken care of and should be taken care of. And it's irresponsible that they're not being taken care of, because that's why we created the TIF district. And it's just going to grow more and more and more every time, every 15 years that a project's approved. Okay, so I mean, we really, really need to figure out how to utilize and have that money work from the community it's being taxed. Okay, and it's just real, real important. And some of these things that we all want to do can be done, and it doesn't need to come out of the general budget.
Yeah, I would let our budget office and Department of Public Works or Office of Transportation maybe figure that out. I think what we're just trying to figure out here tonight are, what would the advisory committee, what capital projects would the advisory committee like to see here in the Odenton Town Center? As far as like bus routes, from what I understand, those can be changed pretty easily. Right? It's just telling the bus driver where to go, what new route is operating, and getting the word out to riders. So we don't necessarily see that as a capital project. So again, is looking back at the list, are there items that you would like to move up and down as far as priorities, or add or subtract?
well, I think just digesting what people have said so far, looks like the Mark Station certainly should stay in that top priority list, even if it appears it's going forward, if there is some risk of losing funding for that. So maybe that needs to be overall number one. That's kind of like an anchor in the whole area.
I think the park too is important.
I would
talk
agree
all
about the
that.
park. I
Okay,
think needs to be number one. It's also the most feasible, and in terms of timeline, like gonna happen sooner.
the grid streets, I don't know. It's really funny is, I always thought it was a little ridiculous anyway, but I think that there are a couple of the grid streets, that could be more important than others, but I don't think we want to get in the middle of that.
What about the sidewalk toward 175 sidewalk?
So, I talked to State Highways. They've actually put me in touch with another gentleman who I briefly spoke to, and they don't have any additional information at this time. Mark, it would be real helpful if maybe you can help get something through long range planning, or if you know anything more. I was told by somebody I was told by a business owner that had met with State Highways that they weren't doing sidewalks on both sides of the street anymore. And when I called and confirmed that with Shannon at the state, she said, no, that's not true. We are doing it on both sides. And this other gentleman was the one that was in charge of deciding on the parking signals and the crossings. That's where they were now, as part of the warrant study, but that's all I have. They weren't forthcoming with any more information, and I did wear the Odenton Town Center committee hat asking that we would like an update. So I don't know, Mark, if you have anything else.
Yeah, no, in the sheet that I sent around, we do have the last column is the 2024 status. And so it states that MDOT is awaiting federal approval to continue with design.
Yeah, they were being held up a little. They ran out of money, but I thought that that was funded in July. So I don't know if when that was updated again, Mark.
This was within the last month or two that I got.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll take that as accurate then. I don't have a problem.
So if we're talking about the sidewalk on
I
175,
think it needs to move up.
I was going to say, move that up, but what about also the streetscape, which is Academy Yard, the 170 streetscape? Was that something we could pull up too because it's similar? It's not actually in the towards the end. It's fifth or sixth from the bottom. Y'all see that?
I
Where?
mean, I'm
Oden
sorry
Avenue?
to interrupt, but I mean, last year we had a whole discussion around the feasibility of these projects, and we ended up moving some of them further down the list that it required the state or private
Yeah.
funding.
Correct.
Mhm.
And I mean, just to go back to your question, Martin, yeah, I mean, I think sidewalks on 175 is probably very high up there on the priority list. I would love to make it number within those first three, but I remember we said last year, well, it's not going to happen. So why waste this spot of priority projects that's going to the county specifically, not the state, on projects that we primarily need the state to chime in on? So I'm
Well
just going to
taken,
put that
Colette.
out there.
Mark, can you qualify that as far as, is this specifically funded by the county or is this somehow through the state and that they would review this?
From what I understand, it's a joint project.
Okay, so now
But
the
like this
sidewalk is a
priority
joint
list, Mark,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Stuart, the
Go ahead, Ben.
priority list specifically, does the state get this?
So the priority project letter that you all will send to the Office of Planning and Zoning, we'll share it with the Department of Public Works and Office of Transportation. Then the whether it's the Department of Public Works, but ultimately it gets fed to the county executive who drafts a letter to the Maryland Department of Transportation secretary for state projects, which is, so I sent you an example of last year's letter that the county executive sent to the state.
Right.
So right is, to answer your question, is this letter gets sent to county departments for review, and ultimately if it's within the jurisdiction of the county, it can be considered for funding. If it's more of a state project, then it gets fed into the letter that goes to the state from the county executive.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it can move up the list then, because it's a state project, so it'll bid on their plate, but it certainly was not at all in the CTP plan at all. It wasn't in the list of 30 projects at all. So I wonder, even doing that, whether it's even going to matter, although it is in their queue. And there is some funding. They're waiting for the other funding. So, how would that work? So now we put that as a priority. It's a project they're already funding. They're already started, and maybe by moving something in front of that, it could start something else. What are your thoughts about that, Colette, especially since you made the suggestion?
I mean, it is professionally, I've seen how these transportation priority letters go. And everybody's got a lot of priorities and not much usually ends up happening on it. So I feel like we have more luck. Yeah, I mean, it is what and especially in the coming years, I would say. But I mean, it's hard. It really is a huge priority. Every time when we meet, we have the sidewalks on 175 come up again.
I really think we ought to put that up on the higher priority list.
I think we ought to move it up and leave the other 3 in there and call it a day.
Yeah.
I
I-
think
Yeah, we
the
could
other
do
ones are
that.
too small to worry about, and if we could figure out the TIF funds, maybe we could take care of them through that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I want to do something, see if you all agree with this. When we have the Mark Station, it says Mark Station and TOD. I want to emphasize this first and last mile, even if, it's a tall order to get it done. But the statement there in the description needs to address what TOD's function is. And if we're not doing the first and last mile to get cars off the road, you're just creating a huge bottleneck at the station with all these people coming in and out. So if you guys are okay with this, we can vote on this, but on the description where it says Mark Station Parking Garage and TOD, put some added verbiage there that would say it's important to consider the circulator bus schedule, if you will, to support the Mark train service.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Here's what I've written. In order to truly implement TOD, reliable local transportation service needs to be improved and dedicated to supporting Mark train schedules so that local travelers on Mark have a way home without driving their car. This will mitigate the growing car congestion around the Mark station, which will reduce pollution, save on fuel, and reduce safety risk caused by traffic congestion. Would that be fair?
Martin, I think you need to shorten it by about 3 pages
Look where I think she's right.
so that it fits into the box.
All right, I'll see if I can shorten it. But
Martin, I really think the point is TOD includes support of local transit for the last mile. Simple as
Yeah.
that.
can
Yep.
say that. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
okay. All the rest of the stuff, I get it, but let's just get to the point, and then when it's time to make your case for it, we could talk about it then.
Okay. Just one thing I want to knock out of this list is the last item. It's the water tower at Academy Yard. That was discussed at a recent meeting with the developers, and that's not going to happen. So why don't we just scratch that one for now? I don't think we need it down.
Great idea.
I
Great
agree.
idea.
Okay.
And I
Anything else
think-
that, anything
Can I
else
tell you
anybody?
something? That's what's important about maybe preserving that piece of art that we have, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
the same place.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if we can't do the tower, maybe we can get this, and that wall is a good place for it.
Yeah, Phil, Stuart, what is the image? What does the artwork look like? What's it?
You know what, Martin, I would be lying if I told you I remember. I saw it probably when I first came into Odenton in 1986. I probably was in the factory before it was knocked down.
Okay.
But I think it depicts some of the history of the area and the train and everything, which you're always a proponent for. I think it will be very, very fitting there. Now, being outside is probably going to be a challenge, and if somebody tells us it can't be done, it can't be done. But I think it's a good place, and I think the state's in a vulnerable place right now where they might fund it and get that type of commitment.
Yeah, if it's outside, it's probably going to need to be protected, and being so old, it may need to be reconditioned as well.
100%.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it could be some costs there. All right.
I have it though. We have it.
Well, okay, cool. One other thing, the 170 streetscape. I just mentioned it a minute ago. Is that something that we should pull up with the 175 sidewalk? Is that an equal priority or not?
Yeah, that's the side, the 175 Maryland 177 the Station Circle. That's the main one.
Well, this one says, this is down on the list. It's 170 streetscape retrofit Maryland 170 to include bicycle and pedestrian amenities. Partial sections will be improved by developers of Academy Yard. But
I
that's
mean, is that scheduled to happen in the next year?
It's
Is
not
it?
funded.
no, it'll be funded. If we're talking about, why do I not see it on my screen? Or The last one,
Yep. It's the second page, Stuart. It's about the third one down.
is it not up the second page on the screen?
No, we're not showing the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my, forgive me. I got both screens up and I'm looking at both things, so forgive me about that.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is look at these things that, could go together. We've
Yeah,
got,
I think that that's, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that that's going to end up being a developer project when they do, and the first section before they do the retail, one of the things they committed to us, although I think now they're doing both at the same time, is that they would be doing the streetscape just as a buffer of an empty lot. But they may be doing the whole project. Mark?
Yeah, again, the latest iteration that we've seen is that there would be improvements as part of the Academy Yard project. If you also remember, there was a feasibility study done a couple of years ago to try to link the South Shore Trail or WB&A Trail up to the BWI Loop, and going along Maryland 170 was one of those alternative routes. So that could also be done through that capital project if it ever gets revived.
so you're saying, Mark, that that's something that is really with the developer and we don't need
Yeah.
to ballot this now.
Yeah.
It's on our list, but it has little consequence because it's so far down, but it's on the list. Just to remind.
I think it doesn't hurt to keep it on right now.
Yeah, it's there.
And maybe the next time, depending on where that project is, and we know where that street is, then we could take it off if it's being taken care of.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So right now where we are is we're keeping the top three. I'm adding a statement to the TOD as we discussed, and we're pulling up the sidewalk on 175, 170 to a top priority project. And we're striking off the water tower. That so far comprises the changes that we're contemplating here. Anything else that we need to discuss on this?
I think for bus stop improvements, we can just note that you all are preferring or setting the east lot as a priority for some type of shelter or concrete pad.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to bring that one up to priority too then, right? Bus stop improvements.
I mean, you could. It's not necessary. It's just something that I would then, or you could pass along in to say the Office of Transportation or DPW in your letter.
Okay.
Because this priority list is for the next fiscal year and the funding's available for this current fiscal year.
Yeah.
Right. Any more discussion? We got to have more discussion on this, everybody. I want to make sure your
I think
voice
we've
is.
discussed it
Mark?
into the ground. It's just really an update of previous discussion. And I mean, Andrew, Sandra, anybody else have any comments, any input?
Sandra?
No, I agree with what y'all have been saying. I agree with the moving around those couple ones.
Okay.
And Martin, I want to be certain, did you indicate that the Maryland 175 improvement from Mapes to Charter Oaks and the 175 to Sappington Station Circle will move up? Both of those?
It was the sidewalk, the second one down.
Okay,
That one's moving up.
gotcha. Yep,
So we'll have 4 there. Plus the statement I'll add to the TOD. The order will be as noted. I'll write a statement about the bus stop preferred location, at least for one. Is there another location we could propose if they have more money? Enough money?
Look, I would put one on the front lot too.
Front lot?
The west lot, I'm sorry. So you talked about the east lot, which is the one at the end of Odenton Road, where you drive into the parking lot. So now you have the west lot, and then the north lot. So the north lot is the one they're gonna bid for a developer to come in and put more parking and residential there, which will be great. The west lot, the existing lot, main lot where the train station is, Mark, I don't recall if there's covered parking in the roundabout there or not. I think there is.
The roundabout where?
The kiss and ride, the drop off in the
No,
west.
there's nothing there.
So I would think something covered would be nice there. Again, giving people the incentive to use it and not having to wait in the weather.
Well, on the west lot though, that's where the garage is gonna be, so that'll be the stop.
You know how long it's gonna be before that garage. Let's be realistic about it, okay? Come
But on the east lot, I mean, there's something for sure there. And again, as some were pointing out, some of the stops that we have now, whether it's on Piney Orchard Parkway or Watt Chapel or wherever it might be, there is no place, no landing. The one on Piney Orchard Parkway, just grass there. There's nothing
Right.
there.
Well, again, there's a lot that goes, well, look, pick a spot. We're just putting it in there and, seeing if it happens. So it doesn't hurt to just pick anywhere. And does anybody have any other suggestions? I mean, how about the library? Is there a covered spot at the library? And does transit go to the library? I think the free bus does. Mark?
Yeah, there's a bus stop just at the intersection of the library entrance. It doesn't go into the library. And like I said, is that there are no improved stops in Odenton.
I would say 175 and Charter Oaks. I drive up there to and from work every day, and I see all sorts of people using a number of the bus stops on that
Andrew, where's
especially
Charter
the
Oaks?
closer you get towards 175.
Andrew, where's Charter Oaks again? Refresh my geometric memory here.
Oh my goodness.
Is it?
That's right across from the front gate. That's the
okay,
Highs
got it.
and Dunkin' Donuts area. There's
Okay.
always people waiting for buses there. Always.
Is the developer for Blue Oaks going to be installing a bus stop shelter though? I thought that was part of the discussion with the project.
The new apartments?
Yeah,
They might be, I don't remember.
I'm
I
just
would
not sure
probably-
whether the
That's
stop will be-
a little bit further up
Yeah,
from
it's-
where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's like in between
Yeah.
Blue Water and Charter Oaks.
Right.
Yeah. But a lot of people use the stops on Charter Oaks.
So these are the eyes that are good. So that you know what? It's almost like you put a sidewalk down and somebody wears a path in another direction. That's where you need to move the sidewalk because that's where people want to walk.
At the
So now-
university campus.
Yeah, so now here's Colette and Andrew telling us exactly where the people are using the bus a lot. That's where the stop should go, not where in our mind we think they should go. It's where they're being used. I like those suggestions. So
There were some benches put along Charter Oaks just a couple months ago, but I
Yeah,
don't
there's
think they actually put
benches.
one up by the Dunkin' Donuts.
There's
Oh.
one bench right by the Seven Oaks Community Center there.
Yeah.
But
But not on
nothing
purpose.
covered. And I know there's a lot of people that sit at the Highs there and wait, and at the Dunkin' Donuts too, out in the cold and no
Is
roof over
that-
the head because they can't wait inside all the time.
Mark, is that still within OTC though? It's like within the town
right
center.
on the edge, but it is.
It's right on the edge, right?
It's the tail of the turtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a small
Turtle.
includes Charter Oaks and even Blue Water.
And it's
Yeah, but-
easy access to base too for
Mhm.
anyone that needs to commute.
Regardless of where it is, if it's going to affect the town center, that's what you gotta look at too. I mean,
So just throw them all in there.
I'll make up a list. I
Yeah,
guess
just make up a list, Martin. It really, we know it's a crapshoot. And again, I really think this should be funded out of the TIF funds and there's a pool of money there and
Yeah,
bypass this process.
I can state, perhaps there are three, if you all agree. One is the, east side. One is the Charter Oaks, if you want, and the other would be Piney Orchard somewhere. And whether it's, Watt Chapel, whether it's Piney Orchard Parkway, because a lot of people in the Piney Orchard area take the train, a lot of government workers there. So, want to get their cars off the road. If you're okay with that, I'll go ahead. Anything else? Anybody have any ideas? Anything else that's on your mind? I didn't find anything else in my review.
I'm good to go. I think this isn't,
So I need a motion to approve these changes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Anybody opposed to the motion? We'll assume unanimous approval of the motion. I
Good
will
discussion
include that
committee.
in the letter. That was actually much easier than I anticipated it would be, everybody. I thought we were gonna spend a long time on that, but looks like
Because we didn't need to talk about EV stations, Martin.
All right, can we move on then? Last call on this issue? If we're good, let's move on. Mark, I turn it back over to your staff on project status update.
Yeah, so again, as everybody here on the committee received the updated list as well as the updated map. And again, for members of the public, you can find that on our county website if you go to aacounty.org/OTC. And on the left-hand side, you see development activity. This list and map are updated quarterly. And so we just kind of discussed any significant updates that have happened, I think since June, when we last discussed this. And frankly, I mean, you can see where the changes are noted in purple. I'm not sure if there's so much to necessarily talk about. There are a couple projects that the committee has received a presentation on. And for a while those projects hadn't submitted an application. And so since then, the applicant has submitted the application. And so they've received their actual project number. And we've been able to update that. Now it is currently in the sketch plan review, for example, instead of just saying application not submitted. Most of the modifications that you may see are just applicants requesting to combine the preliminary plan and site development plan processes because it is in the town center. Projects are afforded that opportunity to combine those phases to help streamline the review process. Maybe the only new thing that wasn't necessarily presented to the committee was number 15, Bonaventure lots. If you remember, there are 6 vacant lots there at the end of Brightwork Avenue. And the owner or the developer had come in several years ago to present that their intention is to build single-family homes on one single-family home on each one of those lots. The developer had come in a while ago to develop one. They're going to do them piecemeal. It's not going to be all 6 lots built at once. So a while ago, the developer had come in for one grading permit, and since June, they've come in now for a second building permit, or grading permit rather, for one of those homes to be built. So other than that, I really don't have any other updates for this process. Oh, I will mention too for the committee is if you go to Google Drive now, we are now placing within the Google Drive folder. There's a folder, I'm going to bring it up here for a second, called Development Projects. And we are now putting the letters from the county after the county has had a chance to review the project. Those letters are now being populated within this folder so that the committee has the opportunity to just review really the presentation that you all received from the developer, how it then ultimately may get changed, doesn't get changed during your review, how it gets sent to the county's review, what we look for, and what some of the issues may be with their submittal. And so you'll read through these letters, and it'll go through several sections of how the project may not necessarily be meeting the code or any of these manuals or any other regulatory documents. And then ultimately at the end, it says whether the county withholds approval or approves the project, now moving to the next stage, as well as then other county department reviews. It's really this folder with now these letters from the county to applicants. It's all public information. So, you know, whether we share it with you or whether you were to submit a Freedom of Information Act request, you know, it's all above board here. But it is all meant to be for your information. There's a lot of technical information in here, but it may just give you a sort of a glimpse into how the county is reviewing these projects and what some of the holdups may be. And ultimately, when you do see some projects getting numerous letters, you can see sort of, again, how projects may not be meeting the code and how the county is interpreting certain sections of the code.
So, Mark, that gives us greater insight into the process, perhaps, and may give us more intelligence about how we recommend things or move things along from our own perspective.
I don't know if your review necessarily changes too much because your review doesn't include the code. It's really just to see how the project is meeting sort of the spirit of the master plan and some of the strategies within the master plan. But it's really just, again, intended to provide some greater insight to the question of, is it the developer's fault? Is it the county's fault of why some of these projects aren't getting built?
Okay, makes sense. Colette, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm actually wondering, Mark, has OPZ received any guidance from DHCD about some of the legislation that was passed in the last session at state regarding TODs?
This wasn't House Bill 538, was it?
Yeah, where it's like 3/4 of a mile from the TOD or like within the TOD, and I'm just curious whether any of the projects that we have on the list right now would apply to that, and if you all have received any guidance or details about it.
I'd need to look more into it, and we'd have to consult with our sort of affordable housing arm, Aaron Karpowitz from ACDS, the county's affordable housing arm, who works more closely with Secretary Day's office. So
That's a good question, Colette. Yeah, thanks for asking it. Stuart?
Yeah, there's actually another affordable housing bill coming through that is, I get a headache every time I try to read it because it's incredibly long and really wordy. In the short, I think it's good, I think. But there's several references to the Odenton Town Center plan in there. So I think it might be a good idea for us to get, I don't have them with me, to get what they are, and should we have an opportunity to comment if it's something that they might be changing in our plan legislatively.
Are you talking about state, Stuart, or local?
It's local.
Okay.
It's local. The second thing is we've been at this a long time. Some of us have been on this committee for a long time and have reviewed dozens of projects, and somebody has to ask why only one project is being built. No one will do it. And there's a reason, and I can't say it. Okay, and I'm just saying, I wish the public would ask, where is the Odenton Town Center? In the past 5 years, Columbia has built 3 million square feet. Crofton is built out. Where is the Odenton Town Center? Where are all these projects that we as a committee were willing to recommend, even with its modifications that were necessary, because we understood that that's how it needed to be built, because not every plan fits into every property.
I appreciate that, Stuart. I don't
And
know
I
if it
just
was,
think that we need to know. We need,
Yeah.
we need to wonder. There's
I don't know
one
if it was-
project, the apartments in front of Fort Meade, which is great.
yeah. I don't know if
Thank
there's a
you.
simple answer to that question, though. Maybe Mark, you can weigh in, but I don't know what.
Well,
I don't
Mark,
know
I have a
exactly what
question
you're
for you.
asking. Why projects aren't getting built? Why aren't projects getting permitted?
Correct. Why aren't they getting approved to be built, number one? And number two, when a plan comes in by a developer, what's your role, if at all? When you've sat in front of this committee and you understand the discussion, you've seen the discussion, what is your role, if at all? Or isn't there
Can do a lot,
shouldn't you
Stuart.
defend this committee or the plan that you
Stuart?
sit here with us for hours and hours on end?
Well, you know,
Yeah,
lost
so
Stuart.
I mean, again, is I think these letters that you'll be receiving, or it's the folder is already populated with, I think, 3 or so. You'll see how some of these projects aren't meeting the code, and the Office of Planning and Zoning, specifically Sam and I's position with the Long Range Planning Division, is to review these projects with our development division to make sure that they're consistent with the master plan and the code provisions. So if your question is why aren't these projects getting built, it's maybe in some of these cases where under the development review phase and status, maybe the applicant hasn't submitted their project, or again, going back to these letters that are now in the folder, you'll see that some of these projects aren't meeting the requirements of the code. And so the county cannot approve those projects until they meet the code.
Yeah, I think, Mark, there's a number of reasons that could be pointed at. I think you mentioned the
Thank you, Mark.
developers, not providing timely responses either. So it's a combination of things. I want to leave that discussion for a moment. I do want to just close off the priority projects. Abigail had sent me an email with some comments she wanted to make about it. She asked about the Odenton Park, and Mark, this is a question for you. And I don't think I think this answer is no, but she asked, would the committee have the opportunity to review the bids received for the community engagement part of the work? I don't think we're involved in that kind of bid. Are we?
No, that project's handled by the Department of Public Works and
Yeah.
Recreation and Parks.
Yeah, I don't, that's a whole different
Hey, Mark,
process.
do you have an update on the park at all? Any idea?
Well, that was going back to the priority project list. We included a column for 2024 updates. Let me bring it up again. So it says bid late fall, early winter 2024. Construction is anticipated to start in late spring, early summer. And that would be for phase 1.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
All right. We're on to, we're gonna leave the project status update now in the priority list. Any advocacy and new business? I got a couple of things I want to announce. Anybody have anything? Yeah.
Yeah, Martin, I had a few things, but we may overlap here based on an earlier discussion. So
Okay, yeah. Go
do you
ahead.
want first, or do
Go
you want
ahead.
me to go first?
Sorry?
Would you like me to go first with a
Yes,
couple?
please, go right ahead. Yes.
Okay. So just a couple announcements. The Region 5, if you remember, when the county did their countywide master plan over 3.5 years ago, we broke the county up into 9 regions so that we could do some more intimate planning with the communities. Region 5 is what the Odenton Town Center is in, and that process is currently underway. There is a stakeholder advisory committee similar to you all that will be having their first kickoff meeting in the middle of October with 2 other regions, since we'll be talking about some similar material. And then Region 5 SAC, Stakeholder Advisory Committee, they'll start their own independent meetings in November and carry on through maybe the middle of May. The Region 5 plan is similar to what you may find in the Odenton Town Center plan, a list of issues and strategies on how to address those issues, as well as zoning, where we'll be doing an analysis of zoning in Region 5, identifying where there need to be certain changes, whether it's just sort of aligning zoning district lines with parcel boundaries, or there's been a change in the neighborhood or in certain areas, and we need to recommend various upzonings, downzonings, or changing the use of the zoning. So again, like I mentioned before, Sam and I will provide updates on that Region 5 process every month now, since we'll be kicking off in October.
The other thing, Mark, you can comment on is just the Piney Orchard Street Fair that was recently held was a big success. I'm not sure if anybody went to that. I was there. Mark was there. I saw him there. A lot of people turned out for that. And Mark, you were collecting some comments, which I think you're going to collect later on.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Martin. So as part of this Region 5 planning process, as you can imagine, we need to be out in the community talking with folks, better understanding what the issues are. So we try to get out to these weekend festivals or any other sort of outreach events that may be held within the region. So we attended the Piney Orchard Street Festival a couple weeks ago. We were out there all day and heard from a lot of folks. Some of your typical stuff: more green space, more parks, more sidewalks, better transportation. There was one specific to Odenton. One individual wanted to see solar panels on the Nevermar parking lot area, so the west side.
Wasn't me, Stuart.
Yeah. So
Duly noted.
Okay.
So with this, like I said, is because we've been going to several of these festivals, including Odenton Day, which is coming up in another week and a half or so. We'll be tabling there, so please stop by if you'd like to share some ideas or tell your friends, neighbors, family members, come out and see us. We are compiling all these comments and putting them into a summary document, which we will share shortly. So once all that gets published, we'll, like I said, push that out to you all so you can see what folks are saying, not only about Odenton, but some of the surrounding areas.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Thank you very much for that. You hit all the points I was going to raise, so
Appreciate you getting out there, Mark.
That's good.
And then the other thing I was going to mention, Martin, if you want to dig into it a little bit more, is our start times here, just from a housekeeping standpoint. We start at 6:30. It's one of the later start times for committees throughout the county. And I know some people do have some hard stops at 8, 8:30 or 9. And just seeing if there's an appetite to start these meetings at an earlier time, at whether you want to start at 6 or even 5:30, like the stakeholder advisory committees. So
I would be very supportive of starting earlier.
Yeah, I will too. I like that, Mark.
I'm good.
Can we shoot for 6? I'm not sure if people, for example, Jason, I don't remember if he said he could be available at 5:30. He has to drive home, I think. So I'm not sure. Do you know, Mark, if 5:30 have been too early for him?
Let's start with 6, right? And I'll send out the calendar invite. Again, we are just asking for one night a month.
Mhm.
So again, is if you can make that commitment to make that a priority for one night.
Do we want to vote on that now, or just discuss it and say so far it looks good and wait for the next meeting, or what?
I think we need to vote on it to make a change, don't we, Mark?
Yeah, we do, but
Yeah.
not many people are on this call today.
Well, they should be, and if they're not, we have a quorum, we make a decision.
Martin,
Yes,
I'll make a motion that we, at our next meeting, start at 6.
is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion on this? All those opposed? No one's opposed, so unanimous approval to start at 6 in November. Sorry, October.
October, right? Yeah. Okay,
Very good. Thanks, Mark.
great.
Nothing else on advocacy and new business?
I do have one quick thing that I would just want to bring up. The Odenton Severn Sustainable Communities plan there's a final draft currently that's being circulated among the folks that were part of that process. I was sitting in on those meetings as well as Jason. And so just so you all know that is happening. And there was a request that Jason brought up to share the draft with the OTCAC for review. And so Mark, I don't know if it's still going to be sent around, but just to keep an eye out for that, and that is going to be submitted soon. I think the deadline's like middle of October that Lynn has to get that in. So hopefully that draft will come around to the committee soon, just to take a quick look and share any feedback. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Mark. I don't know if this is just general info though, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just the application to renew the designation.
Yeah. And then Jason essentially wanted to make sure that everyone else here had a chance to take a quick look and provide any feedback if there was anything that needed to go in. But I mean, essentially not too much is changing in terms of the application for the renewal. And I mean, there really should be no surprises in there. It's really more, hey, please give us this designation to make improvements easier.
So Mark, was the process for getting the chance to look at this then? How does that work?
Yeah, I'm not sure because Lynn is also away on vacation.
I mean, I can send around the draft that she sent that I recently received. I'll just email it around.
Okay.
Or I'll send it to you, Mark, and then you can share it with everyone.
Yeah. And like Colette was saying, is there shouldn't be any surprises because some of the recommendations actually are related more to the Severn area. But then where it does apply to the Odenton Town Center, the application will just kind of echo a lot of the strategies that are also in the master plan. And so what that does is actually kind of leverages a lot of these strategies and sort of makes them louder than when decision makers need to start to implement or want to implement something, that it's a publicly vetted document or through the state as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing that. Thanks, Colette. That's terrific. Anything else? If not, let's move on to general public comment. We have 3 people on the line. Looks like we have a comment from DH. DH? I don't know if can
Yep, she'll be joining us here in a second.
unmute. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, great. I just wanted to say I think Odenton is nicer than Columbia and Crofton. We have an urban forest, we have really nice historical buildings, and we have the train station. So for what it's worth, I've spent a lot of time in both of those areas as well, but I think Odenton has some really good charming features. Thank you.
Well, it's nice of you to say that. Gives us confidence. Thank you. Any more comments from other attendees? If not, any last one more things from the group here? If not, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second.
Any discussion on adjournment? No? All in favor?
Hi.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back.